Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just Another Kill Team podcast, connecting kill team communities across the globe. If you're passionate about the tactical skirmish game that brings together strategy, lore, and creativity, you are in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay updated with our latest episodes. If you want to support the show, check out our Patreon. Your support means a lot to us. Follow us by using the social media links in the podcast description for all the latest news, and be sure to leave a review to let us know what you think. Thanks for tuning in. Here's today's episode.
Alrighty. We're here with Tom from the UK. I met him at the World Team Championship where he was playing Inquisition for UK Team 1, who came in, second place at the World Team Championship.
So close. So far.
No slouches, And we wanted to bring Tom on to talk a little bit about the Inquisition Agents, especially because we've got an all-new TAC Op deck, and part of what we're doing is using the Learn to Master series to kind of prep players for the mindset of the new edition and how we practice getting it, into the TAC Ops. So for this, we're going to have the World Team Championships as the final penultimate tournament we're going to go talk about, but we're going to talk with Tom about first impressions on the Inquisition Agents before we actually started practicing in the team format, what he thought was going to be good or bad, and then dig into how those impressions changed before we get to the World Team Championship. And then the end, if you make it all the way there, we'll talk about what he thinks are going to be hot picks for the new Inquisition Agents in the new days.
Right. Yeah. So I guess the best place to start off then is to kind of talk about why and how we ended up going with Inquisition for Team 1. Because originally I was on Team 2 and I was playing Sanctifiers. The idea obviously being that Team 1 would have a Sanctifiers player and Team 2 would have a Sanctifiers player, because Sanctifiers are, Sanctifiers.
Yeah. But they remain Sanctifiers, They haven't been changed enough to make them not good yet, so.
Yeah. And we were talking about team balance, and Bart was messaging me separately asking about, what do you think? My reply was, when it comes to looking at the actual balance of the teams itself, Inquisition it gives you so much in terms of you can throw them into a bad matchup and you're probably not going to lose by too many, wherever it is. And it's such an adaptable team anyway in terms of your choices for TAC Op. In terms of your choice for actual team selection, even that it made a lot of sense that if you're going to take someone to a team event, it seemed like just a no-brainer to have them in as an option. I think at that time we were looking at either Cults or Exaction being on Team 1, and then we have teams that do similar thing to Cults anyway, and Inquisition kind of do Exaction, but better. So I think Bart took a long time to think about it, and he came away and thought actually it'd be a good idea that we'll drop Sanctifiers from Team 2 and we'll move Inquisition onto Team 1, which, if you look at the actual record, it turned out to be a very, very good choice by Bart. We'll get into that with teams as well.
Extremely flexible at all times, right?
Yeah. And it turns out, even though no one had thought about it or knew it, that Inquisition are like a hard counter to Raveners, and not even like the Polish team, which have like the best Inquisition player in the world. They didn't even figure that out. But I played them once in a singles event. I was like, wow, I can really ruin these guys. And then when it came to the teams event, 5 out of my 7 games were into Raveners, because we didn't have a real good choice to take Raveners. And it just so happened that I'd figured out in one of the random singles games that, Inquisition could really ruin Raveners' day. So it ended up being a very good idea on Bart's part to move Inquisition into Team 1.
So did you only do one singles tournament with the Inquisition before you took them to the doubles? Or had you been playing Inquisition for a long time before that?
So I played them second edition. I took them to the team event previously, and I took them to Worlds as well. So obviously they've gone through an entire new edition, which changed them a hell of a lot. They are they look the same, but they are not the same team. And I guess to cover that off, Inquisition are a weird team compared to how they used to be. So all their standard operatives, which come in basic roster, they all got worse. Everything lost reap. Most of the guys lost their cool abilities. All their abilities became worse. All your equipment, which worked well with them, they all became worse as well. So everything got a little bit worse. However, all your ploys, which were pretty terrible, became good. So Quarry being able to go from balance to ceaseless just made it, usable. And the equipment allowed you to move it. It meant that you weren't wasting CP by, previous edition, you're doing it. And then obviously the person who's acquired runs out the way. You're like, cool, that's a CP wasted. So it gives you a lot more flexibility, and the players are far better now. So between that and between Kazakin getting a massive glow up, between Exaction Squad getting the Weber, who is now, useful and really, really oppressive in some matchups with the amount of ability you can shoot into combat and push that threat range out. Yeah, they are similar, but also extremely different to how they were last edition. So I played them in third at Worlds. Really good team, but that was like the nightmare third edition start where there's just Warp Coven and Higher Tech and Legionary running around doing horrendous things.
I mean, Inquisition were definitely better then too.
Oh, yeah.
They got their little nerf, and everyone kind of backed off of Inquisition agents, I feel like. So seeing them at the World Team Championship and kind of like this bubbling undercurrent of like, oh, they're actually playable again, as long as you can handle when you need to pick the specific tools for the specific matchups. So were there any things before, because it sounded like UK had a fair amount of practice before going to the World Team Championship to try to figure out who's on which team. So I'm kind of curious, what concepts or thoughts did you have before you guys started practicing on Inquisition agents, and what did you think was strong before you started practicing, and what ended up feeling strong after the initial team practice?
Well, in all honesty, like I said, I was supposed to be in Sanctifiers, so I did Warhammer World with Sanctifiers. Won 4 events where I just stomped people and they had a miserable time. Then I lost 2 games, one against Higher Tech, which was Dan, which, it's Dan. That happens. But that was a miserable time because Higher Tech are miserable. And I was like, you know what? I don't really like Sanctifiers as they are. But I'll play them for the team's event because it's for the country. We'll do it for the country. And then I was playing Inquisition at the local league, thinking I haven't played them since Worlds previous year, so I'll give them a run now and see what that's like. And during the course of that, I was like, actually, there's the tools here. I knew they were good, but I hadn't been playing them to the fullest extent. I took a bit more of a think about what it is they could do. And I was like, actually, I think, Bart, you might want to know that I think Inquisition are actually a really good pick here. So, like I said, it's supposed to be Sanctifiers, and that's what I did the practice with. That's what I did Warhammer World with.
So that's actually a good point. You brought them to Worlds last year. They were a different team. You used Kasserkin probably because that was, they hit on threes. They deleted everything. You knew you were going to play against Space Marines, so you wanted that AP2 to be consistent. Moving over to the World Team Championship, once you know that you're going to be playing Inquisition agents because you've gotten a feel for it, was it still Kasserkin, or did you switch over to Exaction Squad? Because I know we've had people on here who talk about how Exaction Squad are the melee skew. You can take Breachers sometimes if you want some silly stuff because the shield is cool. What did you settle on before and after, or is it still Kasserkin the whole way through?
It was pretty much Kazakin all the way through. I would say that there was a caveat. It wasn't always. I did take Exaction once, and that was in the singles into Void Dancers, because you don't need the piercing into Void Dancers, and the Weber and all the shotguns will do a number on Void Dancers, as will obviously the shield guys. So typically, and I think the elf matchup is the elf and the Goremongers. Goremongers are pretty much elves, really, aren't they? The elf matchup is one where you probably go Exaction because you need to be able to shield and shoot into combat and punish them for trying to hug you in combat where they want to hug you, and then stopping from able to double kill, which is what the elves and the Goremongers are also very good at doing into Inquisition, because Inquisition are very squishy. So typically, you always go Kazakin, but I think I caveated by if you have that rough combat matchup, Exaction are also the way to go. I want to breaches, but it's not worth it. Most of the stuff hits on 4s. You don't have the flexibility. You don't have the shooting. And then I guess I have the back pocket deathcore, so that if you ever run to Mandrakes, you can take an extra guy, have the sniper, and run armored bodysuits because they're a 5-up save, which technically means the 4-up save from the armored bodysuits works against Mandrakes. Mainly for the fun of it, not because it's particularly
more
useful.
To chew through.
Yeah. There's more guys, and the snipers as good there as it is in Kazakin, And obviously, I had Sisters of Silence. They were sat there. I borrowed Tom Catch-sized models, and the idea is if I ever get Warp Coven, I could put them on the table, show them I have them, and then not pick them. So yeah, it's just for intimidation. Yeah.
Did you ever have a matchup where the UK team was thinking you might actually bring out the Sisters of Silence, or they just fully relegated the meme category?
No, absolutely just there to intimidate Warp Coven.
Yeah, luckily you don't have to really play against a ton of them. Although UK1 did have a fairly successful Warp Coven player for that weekend when it happened.
Yeah, it's mental that they weren't a bigger pick, they are still despite the nerfs, they are still ridiculously strong.
Yeah, I'm Warp Coven very flexible, similar to Inquisition Agents. When you have so many rules attached to you, you got a lot of range of flexibility. So that actually brings us into, after your first set of practice games, you played the one tournament at Inquisition Agents, or with the current patch. What did you feel like was the standout after that one tournament?
So I came away from there and I looked at it, and it's quite obvious with Inquisition to look at the amount of sheer damage output from individual sources and think there's going to be some teams that are really going to struggle. Because if you go into elites, and it's fairly obvious that if I trade a metal gun for elite, that's quite a good trade. And some elite players will take that because it gets the metal gun out of the picture. But equally, if you team up a Pistolier with Quarry and the Mystic buff, he can quite feasibly do an elite on his own as well. And you get to thinking, actually, Inquisition, what they actually do best is you trade your damage piece for someone else's very important piece, and your opponent thinks, great, damage piece is out of the way, but actually you've got 5, 6, 7 guys who can do that, and they probably have 6, 7, 8 guys on their team. So that's where I was coming away from it, thinking any elite matchup, Inquisition going to ruin them. And then there's quite a few little techie things where people who are dependent on either being able to hide outside of combat or being able to use a specific ploy when they really need to, but Inquisition could just turn up and dominate. So intense scrutiny, so you're not in cover with the 4-inch. And obviously, Absolute Authority, the one that everybody knows. Some teams, it just ruins their day. So having them in your back pocket going to teams is also really important.
Were there any of those tools? So I assume that Counterspell you do every game. Like there's no time when Absolute Authority does not make a big impact. Did you find that you were using it on a specific turn during your practice games, like the second turn or the third turn? Or did you stage in a way where people weren't going to get much done on the second turn? Because I think that's one of the things that Horde players have to adapt to in the new edition and for the new TAC Op spread is how forward are you setting up your pieces and how many pieces of bait are you giving your opponent?
Yeah. So typically, and everybody going into Inquisition knows you have the tool. So if you have that one big ploy, what most people will do is they will try to bait it out turn 2. And being Inquisition, you can quite happily go 2 up on the back previous approved ops. You could quite easily get 2 on your tackle that you needed, take 1, maybe 2 on the crit op, and then you don't have to worry about the turn 2 being the big one where you've been baited out on the Absolute Authority. So typically I saved it for turn 3, especially back in the day when it's Legionary and Warp Coven with the piercing negation. You nearly always save that for turn 3 where it became really vital, but you could hold over during the turn 2 until you really needed it. So yeah, that was pretty much the play. It's fairly simple to figure out. You save that play for turn 3 when your opponent has to commit, because otherwise they will lose the game if they don't come in at turn 3.
And then was there a ploy that kind of came out of the back pocket to surprise people, or was there kind of like a range of options? I know you mentioned the Mystic buff, which is really good. The Mystic buff lets you turn your normal hits into a critical hit or a fail into a normal hit, which means that you can push a lot of damage, especially on an operative that can shoot twice, like the Pistolier.
Yep. Yeah, obviously the Mystic buff's a big one. I guess we'll come into that when we do the actual teams event and the amount of Ravenous players I had to play, where it turned out that you could semi-reliably with a Melticon with Quarry and Mystic buff just one tap a Ravener, and they were not expecting that.
Because I think, one of the things that these hyper elite teams kind of hold on to is that one shooting attack generally doesn't do it and one operative generally doesn't do it. Part of the way that Raveners get killed by higher tech is that there are 2 shooting actions at the same time that chip down a Ravener. So we'll definitely get into that when we hit the World Team Championship stuff. Are there any, so of the generic agents on the Inquisitorial Agents, are there any operatives that you feel like are undervalued by the community or ones that you always take? Obviously the Pistolier you always take, but maybe a pick that is not as common?
Yes, the Hexorcist. Now, the Hexorcist is a big one because he used to be better, and again, he got a bit of a nerf. However, the turning off rerolls with a 6-inch, it's horrific. There's so many teams now, especially elite teams, which are all about them rerolls. Raveners have, at some points, I've played Raveners where they had 8 CP, and they're saving it just for rerolls. And I mean, why wouldn't you? The deploys aren't amazing for Raveners anyway. But the Hexorcist just been there to turn around and go, I'm going to shout at you and say, no, you don't get to do that. And I did actually do quite a lot of little techie plays with his turn off ability. So I've turned off the Wrecker's -1 damage. I've turned off the leader's neuropredatory instincts for an amazing play where I turned that off. I then APL buffed the Mystic, who's an icon bearer, so he could run onto the point and tap it from underneath the leader, who, there's a lot going on to be able to do that. But when it comes to team events and you're winning that one crit op for the team, that's what you got to do. So yeah, the Hex Assist is a lot of fun, just having this screaming hobo running around saying, no, you can't do any rerolls.
Does the Hexorcist have to use an ability to turn off rerolls, or is that just like a passive part that's always on his data card?
6-inch and visible debuff. So he has got the Hexercise ability, which is 6-inch visible, no rerolling attack or defense dice. And then you've got the Chasen ability, which is a 1 AP action for someone within 6 and who's a valid target. It lets you turn off a rule on their data sheet, which is pretty fun, especially against the big crest of the Ravener that stops rerolls and stops APL modification and all the other stuff, right?
Yeah. It's so much fun, people having a role being taken away from them, yeah. And it's one of the ones that people quite often miss.
Because I think the Hexorcist is like a squishy piece that doesn't really do a lot of output. So he's really there to push a lot of support for your teams. 4 dice on 3s, 3/3, range 6 shotgun, 7 wounds, 5 up save. He's really not an offensive piece, but if he can support or destroy your opponent's game plan, that provides a lot of value. I think Hunter Clade have done a little better as of late with their most recent buffs, and part of it is probably that they've got these 2 massive 6-inch no reroll bubbles floating around.
Yeah, I played against it. It is, the Hunter Clade thing is really, really impressive.
Yeah, it's really good against something like Inquisition Agents, right? Where there's suddenly like 3 no reroll bubbles and they definitely will kill you, and you're just rolling on 3s and praying you kill the 10 wound monsters.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, out of the roster, I mean, typically, and I mean, it's probably about before I was actually playing in the event, 99% of the time it was your leader, the skull, your Deathwell vet, the whatever it's called, what's it, one, the chainsaw, the big one.
The Eviscerator guys. He is the Quest Keeper. 4 on 4s, 2/3, range 8 pistol, and then 4 on 4s, 5/6 brutal. Generally, he gets 1 kill, but without Ceaseless natively, he really is depending on Quarry before he can do anything, right?
He was horrific last edition because of the final gunfire.
Yeah, swings one more time when it dies.
Yeah.
You can use a success if you have it in your pool to strike on death.
Yeah.
So he was pretty much always in because I was playing Raveners, and the ability to put 15 wounds through and know that, the Raveners is going to be a world of hurt, if not dead, after that is nice. So typically he was always in. Then you have the Mystic. The Mystic's amazing because he just does everything you need to do. Like if you need a Seek Pistol to tap a little annoying thing, then he can do that because he hits on 2s. But it's mainly the buff to turn your Melter Gun into Ceaseless, turning a miss into a hit. Or a hit into a crit. So if you quite reasonably playing against Raveners, I'd go run up, shoot a Ravener player, 3 hits, one of those is crit, and a Ceaseless into another hit, or maybe if it was three hits and a miss, then you can get a crit out of that as well with the reroll. And then the Mystic buff turns that into 2 crits, 2 hits, in which case the Ravener, if it's not the Wrecker, is definitely dead, which is always a surprise because it's so reliable, and the amount of I don't think there's many models these days outside of the Canoptek big bugs, and then obviously the Ravener Prime and the Wrecker that can actually survive anything of that magnitude, really.
Okay, now when it comes to Inquisition and Raveners, there's kind of a goofy interaction that kind of came up to me. Can you turn off the poison on the data card? So if they've already poisoned you, can you use the Hexorcist to turn that off so that your poisoned model at low HP won't die?
I'm not sure about that one. Because is it a token that is applied, or is it being given by the rule if the rule is no longer attached to the data card? That's one for you.
All right, please hold.
Yeah, I hadn't even. I don't know. I don't know why that even jumped out at me, but
that's a good idea. I did use it to turn off the ability in the first place before he actually hit me.
Before he poisoned you, good. Yeah.
One for an FAQ, maybe. We're putting him on the spot now.
So I think the poison token exists outside of that rule because it's attached to your unit.
I think so.
But
yeah.
That's probably how I would rule it at the moment. You could definitely turn off the ability to give the token, and I think that would work fine.
But once you're poisoned, you're gonna die.
Yeah, once you're poisoned, it exists on your operative, but if you stop it from being able to poison at all, that works fine. I think the only question on that is the poison rule is attached to a weapon, so there's definitely some weirdness there. I don't really know. Although there is one thing that, Tom, you messaged me after the World Team Championship. So why don't we dig into some of the weird edge cases?
Yeah. This is
Inquisition
an
agents
excellent
have
one.
this crazy ploy that I don't think they really had in a way. The last edition, right? The follow your
It's
opponent.
third edition, yeah.
All right, now we're getting down to the wire for the Renegade Open, which is coming up in just a couple of weeks from when you're listening to this. If you are planning to go and you haven't already gotten a ticket, I think we're actually sold out at this point. We are maybe going to have an opportunity to expand one more time, and if not, we'll have a wait list, and if someone drops and you're on that wait list, we'll let you know and we'll get you into the Renegade Open. Hope to see you there.
Yeah.
And that one
It's like you would go through it.
is the Relentless in Pursuit. So this is kind of like the Tremor size interrupt ability. So if you move within 2 inches of any Inquisition agent, then after that move, the friendly Inquisition agent can follow you with a full reposition that, you know, can move within
Or
2 inches of that ender or perform a charge, yeah, as long as you end within the guy that triggered it. So you basically, all of your operatives are Tremor sides.
Yeah, because we didn't know that if you're moving within 2 inch at any point, because you're moving 1 inch increments. If you come within during that 1 inch increment, you are therefore moving within 2 inch. Therefore, you can use the ploy. I didn't realize. I thought it was like an end state or a start state kind of thing. I thought it was only a start state. So, in hindsight, the Death Ward vet's amazing Inquisition with this ploy because if anybody tries to come up within two of you and he's on conceal, he can charge you from conceal. It's just he becomes much more powerful with that ploy. And I used it as a great effect in one of the singles games against a Star Striders player who fell back, and then I went, cool, I'm going to charge, and my crest keeper goes charging into the middle of three Star Striders who are all either activating or about to be activated, and therefore none of them could get away. And he lost the game off the back of this one play. Went, crap, I forgot you could do that. I'm like, yeah, cool. Now, do you want to fight the girl with the giant eviscerated chainsaw? He's like, probably not, but I'm going to have to try and kill her. So yeah.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us about, because you took Inquisition agents through the WTC singles tournament, right?
Yeah.
So do you want to talk to us about how those 7 games played out? And because you played mostly Ravners at the team tournament, so by the time we get there, we'll have Ravner specific tech that probably will exist in perpetuity. Like it's going to be good for the whole edition. So good luck, Ravners, after the Inquisition agents in your area here about those games. But in the singles tournament, you definitely got to noodle around a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about what you were thinking before the tournament, and then by the time you finished those 7 games, what you always did and what you thought you were going to do that you ended up not doing as much.
So going into it, obviously I was going in thinking originally I was going to be playing Sanctifiers, and now I'm playing Inquisition. So I took it as actually this is a great time to try and properly learn the game against the best in the world effectively. So it was very much a case of I'm not expecting to win this. I'd like to go 5-2, and if I can make top 10, that'd be excellent. I wasn't rusty, but I was very much like I was not mastered, but I was going towards kind of mastering the team. So I saw it as a way to really, concentrate, put my head down, and try and figure out how this team really can play. And yeah, obviously it ended up. I got what I wanted. I got my 5-2, and I got my top 10 finish, and I'm very very close to getting bracketed into the top, the top 4 as well. So yeah, I was honestly more than chuffed considering I hadn't practiced and it was just a last minute change to Inquisition really. But yeah, so my first game, as I was just talking about, was into Star Striders. He was a Polish guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was also the last guy that would play at teams who was then playing Raveners. The Poles were being very sneaky and playing completely different teams to the teams that we'd use in the team events. So whereas I'm learning the team and everybody gets to learn what I do, they were all very sensibly playing a different team, so no one would know what they were going to be doing.
Yeah, there were like two schools of thoughts for the overall like teams going to the World Team Championships. Some people use the singles as a nice, relaxing 7-round tournament, and some people were like, "I've got to re-practice with this team and make sure I'm sharp for the next 8 rounds of gameplay."
Yeah, absolutely. And I was very much with the lack of practice thinking I'm going to be I'm just going to learn this team. If I improve on this team, next time someone plays me, I will be better with the team. Which,
And
I mean,
that's
in
really
the
what
end,
we're here for, to hear about what you learned and what, that's what we're interested in.
absolutely. Well, I went in with my old mindset of it's going to be Kazakin unless I'm playing something like an elf team, in which case I'll go in exaction. And then I took a kind of dour view on things such as intimidating presence and the relentless in pursuit. But actually, over the course of the game, the games, that they grew to be probably I probably prefer them to denounce and absolute authority. If I'm completely honest, just because it ruins the mental mass of your opponent. Like absolute authority, it's a known quantity. Denounce, you get it once, it's a known quantity, and then you can do it again. It's going to cost you even more. Whereas
For
intimidating
people
presence,
who are following, who don't know, denounce is the ability to basically stun an operative for D3 activations, so they can't go when they want to, which can interrupt your opponent's, alpha strikes. And then absolute authority is stop a ploy. Great, everybody knows it. And then intimidating presence is the one we haven't talked about so far, and that's basically your mystic can forces people to
anybody
spend more
actually.
APL.
It's anyone within 3 inch invisible or 6 inch invisible, the mystic, which is amazing because everybody then thinks it's 3 inch and they forget that the blind mystic is over there watching you.
Yeah, it's the symbol of the Inquisition's authority. The rosette strikes fear into the heart, especially when you tell your opponent right as they're about to make their play.
It is genuinely just such a fun rule, and I think it was my first game actually into the Star Striders guy where I realised those two ploys are actually those are real money. We'd both gone plant beacons. We both decided, right, this is just going to be a slugfest. So we were just trading pieces like damage dealers left, right, and centre. It was getting towards the end, and most of his damage dealers were out of the way. I still had some because it's Inquisition. I just get more.
You
And
start
he
with
comes
like
right.
8 good
Yeah,
pieces, and your
yeah,
Star Striders start with 7 good pieces, and then 3 shots of the laser beam, which kind of work like 3 good pieces.
but yeah. But I ended up managing to hold him back on the left side fairly well. The middle was just an absolute scrum, but I had the excess damage dealers over him, so I ended up winning that one. And then the right side, I was kind of hanging on the edge of his home objective, waiting until the very end to go jump on it. But this was a super close game, and it came right down to the very end where I used Intimidate Presence to stop him from planting a beacon, which just ruined his day. And then on the right side, he fell back, and Relentless in Pursuit, my Viscerated Chainsword, comes screaming into his home objective room to stand on it. And he's like, yeah, that's game. I'm like, yeah, that's unless you can kill a chainsword with 2 normal troopers that hit on 4s and a 2-3 damage. It's not going to go well for you, which is what happened in the end.
Yeah, and then your second round was against a legionary player. You are probably pretty confident on most of the elite matchups as Inquisitions, right? So
Yeah,
that went
yeah.
about as expected. And then your third round,
Well, it was.
you were playing.
You say it went as expected. It did not go as expected. He
Okay,
was.
all right.
He was extremely aggressive. So like it's Inquisition, and turn 1, I got 3 shots with Inquisition into Legionary, with a melter gun, the pistol, and a plasma gun. He was very, very aggressive. The problem is so my plasma gun runs up, goes hot into a Legionary and does 0 damage. My melter gun runs up, shoots a guy, does 0 damage. That was 4 shots on 3s with the Mystic buff, and I did 0 damage. And then my Pistolier comes around the corner and does 4 damage to one. I'm like, I'm actually in a lot of trouble here. Because my 3 major damage dealers all got easy shots on Legionaries, and I didn't kill any of them. But turn 2, I turned it around, and MVP was my leader with 5 shots with his silly crap pistol, which is 2-4. 1 shot a Legionary, was on full health. I got 4 crits and a hit, because I give myself an extra attack dice and went full quarry and just went, all right, cool, there's 4 native crits.
Yeah, there's definitely power in more than 4 attack dice, because the game is built around 4 attack dice and 3 defense dice. So anytime you can overload the number of attacks, pretty good, which is kind of how ranged wreckers play, right? They fire 6 dice and you just pray that you hit your opponent hard enough or they go away.
Absolutely. So that was it ended up going how it should have gone, in spite of my attempts to lose the game.
You pulled out of a nosedive after the turn
Yes.
1 failure of your damage dealers, and then in round 3 you're playing one of those matchups where you have to switch over to Exaction Squad theoretically, right? Because you're playing against a Void Dancer player from Spain.
Yes, I was playing against the very good Spanish Void Dancer player, and this was one which I hate this matchup in Inquisition because you can't go Kazakin because they ignore your piercing. The odds are that if they have Domino Field, it's going to be a tricky one for you actually to be able to kill them. And because they outrange you, because they can just flip over anything, it's quite hard. Even with how Inquisition usually are, which is Inquisition are actually able to project a lot of threat. Because if you go Kazakin, you got 2 APL that you can hand out to your big gunners. You can go Intense Scrutiny, which is no cover within 4 inches, which means that your effective range for most of your guys is 13 inches, which is pretty horrific. Only thing is that Void Dancers and some elf teams, they're able to either match that or they have techie ways to be able to stay out of your range while still being in range. So obviously, Void Dancers can flip over and such and continue to pressure you, where even with your ridiculous threat range from Inquisition, you can't match it. So yeah, I ended up going to Exaction to these guys. I lost very narrowly, and I lost because I was an idiot. All I had to do, and I'd done very well. Like the elf matchup's a horrible one, and Void Dancers is probably going into it. We looked at that thinking, if in teams event, I'm not going to get in this matchup because what happens is they'll go in, they'll kill a guy, and then they'll shoot another guy. They'll double kill, and the likelihood is the next guy that shoots them back won't kill them. So I've lost 3 operatives in terms of that turn, and I haven't killed an elf. So it's not a great matchup to begin with, typically. But I did extremely well. I played my heart out, and I got to the very end, and I just forgot that I needed to send my gun servitor to conceal to deny him a kill up, and that would have made it a win. And I forgot to do that. He got an obscure shot into him and killed my gun servitor. I'm like, I was an idiot.
But, the best way to learn is to make the mistakes, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And, it's a singles tournament. It wasn't the team tournament, so it wasn't, as far as the reason why you're at the tournament, it's not a real disaster. It was a good learning experience. What part of the Exaction Squad worked well in the theory crafting, and then after the play, because you took Exaction Squad, what tools for the Exaction Squad ended up playing better, and which tools ended up playing worse?
Also hopping in again to let you know that Crossfire Games is super sick. The battle box is amazing, and you can order one using the link in the show notes.
So I think I was spoilt by the Kazakin comms guy, and having to then readapt to your comms guy. Your arm is 6-inch invisible. It's not as good. 6-inch? Oh no, it's just visible, not 6-inch. It is visible, so it is better than a normal one, but still. He was still excellent because I would sit him just behind the line so that he could hand an APL out, then also shoot into combat, which is just such a good ability to have. Especially like if you get the Gormonger matchup, having a shield guy stood in front of the Gormonger, blocking like an Into the Dark Door, then having your comms guy handing out EPL and also putting the hurt out is really useful. Obviously, the Weber was MVP. He got 2 kills, if I remember rightly. And it's just
for anyone who doesn't know, I just want to talk about the Weber for a quick second, because the Arbides Gunner Weber got a big glow up in this edition. Now it's a 4 dice on 3s, 4/5, range 12, severe stun, and range 12 is kind of unassuming because you just oh, there's a range on it. But if you put him anywhere past the first 6 inches of your deployment, you basically have global reach, right?
Yeah, he might as well be unlimited. Let's be honest. But he was obviously great, and then obviously the Subductor Shield guys, they ruin the maths for Void Dancers, and they can't take anything for granted going into you. This was I wish I'd gone Hex Assist in hindsight, but I went Deathwell Vet, and the problem tends to be is what they will do is they'll throw Splinter pistols or the Melter pistol into your shield guys to get them out of the way. And then they will go in and start double tapping guys and just double killing the rest of your damage dealers. But I managed to hold him off pretty well. It's just I slipped up at the very last minute. I was doing so well. It was supposed to be the bad matchup, the one that I would lose anyway. So frankly, it being that close and it coming down to my own mistake was, that's about as good as you could hope for, really.
Seems like a fair enough game. Void Dancers have lots of ability to kill your non-Exaction Squad operatives, so making sure that you get those in the right position is going to be very important. And that remains in the new edition if anyone's thinking about picking up Inquisition Agents and needs to paint up to 50 models. And then we'll get to the Raveners. We don't want to talk about the Raveners in your next round because we'll get to that for the World Team Championship.
Yep.
And then you've got your round 5 against Zach, who was just on the podcast a couple weeks ago by the time this comes out, playing Sanctifiers. You had a pretty solid win against that. What tools do you feel like the Inquisition agents have that help you beat a Sanctifiers player? Or do you feel like it's kind of a hard matchup normally?
It sounds like an iffy matchup, but actually, again, there are a lot of little independent tools which Sanctifiers actually struggle to deal with. And it was on Volcus, which means that you've got enough long, heavy spaces which they have to struggle to get around. Again, excellent match. The guy was an absolute gent. So me and him would keep touching, like, just best friend for the weekend. So me and him would touch base every time we saw each other to see how things were going. But yeah, this was the match where I realised the Hex Assist was absolute money. Because their two big ploys are both ceaseless. It's ceaseless on defense dice and it's ceaseless in combat. And they'll be able to just stand an inch away from a Volcus wall where they can no longer hit you and be like, yeah, none of you inside the stronghold, because we're both playing take ground, are able to do anything about it. And that was also where I realised, actually, the Miraculous has the ability where she doesn't die the first time you kill her. Turns out if you just shout at her with a Hex Assist, and his entire plan is around not being dead, it works like a charm.
That's true. Yeah, she has the ability to come back to life, but I guess if she's chastened by the Hexorcist, the God Emperor closes his eyes for 1 second.
Yeah.
All right, nice. That's a good one. Round 6, you're up against the Hunter Clade. So one of those matchups that we were talking about, how no rerolls is rough. Was that a game where the no rerolls ended up mattering?
Yes, it was the game where I quite quickly realised that Quarry was absolutely useless in this matchup, and I probably shouldn't have used it. I had no idea. I've never played Hunter Clade this edition.
To be fair, they're going away soon, so most people are probably never going to play against them at this point. And if your local player has them, they might have switched to Battle Clade by now.
Yeah, well, that's for the best, because I am not a fan of Hunter Clade. It's just... in fairness to the guy, he's quite Spanish, and I had no idea what he was saying at any point in time. And because they have so many different ways of stacking up different abilities, some of them are passive from a leader, some of them are from equipment, some of them are from ploys. It's like playing Blades of Cain with their 15 pseudo firefight ploys. Like, how does any of this work?
Just as a small snippet of what a Hunter Clade player can do to you. They can have an operative that has -2 damage with rerolls in melee and rerolls in shooting, and then switch it to rerolls on the other one. Have 3 APL, charge, fight, shoot, and then also Serval Skull. Do something.
Yeah. And that would have been fine. However, he'd got, I don't know if I showed you these, he'd got some dice that marked conceal and ready and active. And they were like some Spanish dice. So the dice were black and orange. They had ready and activate. Now, activate for an English person sounds like to be activated, not activated as in past tense. So I'd taken a look at them. He hadn't put them down turn 1. And they just became a case of me being like, I have no idea who is active, who hasn't activated. And I ended up losing 2 guys and effectively the game in turn 2 because I made a decision based off the fact of dice which are nearly unreadable and don't make sense in English. Which was,
I think from what I remember at the weekend, those were like a gift from the VIP package of the tournament.
They were on sale.
It ended up being this kind of weird situation of these were things that they purchased at the tournament, so it just ended up kind of coming out not the best. But it is what it is. Hunter Clade do have lots of special keywords, and having a little bit of a language barrier, that's part of one of the hard parts of going to international tournaments, so hopefully at Worlds, if you or anyone else has those problems, make sure to talk to your local TO. Please ask questions.
That's exactly the biggest thing I took away from the event is ask the TO. Just like, is this how this works? And that is the best way to do things. But in fairness, his English is better than my Spanish. Yeah,
exactly. Like, everyone is doing translations when you go to any of these international tournaments, because for the most part everyone is using English, and that's part of the reason why it can be hard to play cross-culturally, but it's also one of the joys of playing Kill Team at these larger international tournaments or at the World Championships of Warhammer. You get to meet all these different cultures, all these different people, and we're all playing the same game. It's great. And then round 7, you're against Brood Brothers, one of the menaces of the tournament that theoretically, people were saying Brood Brothers were there for Sanctifiers. What did you use to take apart the Brood Brothers player?
Well, it turned out I didn't have to because he had to leave. So we played turn one, we ran towards each other, and then he was like, "I've got to go."
I see.
So it was a shame because we were both like, we're just gonna run each other, and I know you're on the clock, but unfortunately we had to call the game early. So yeah, it ended up being a bit of a nothing game, which is a shame because I was really looking forward to for the team basis that. I wanted to know what the Brew Brother match was going to be like, and he was the Spanish player, and he was a very good Spanish player who knew Brew Brothers, so I was quite looking
And
forward. Looking forward to it. Yeah,
the end of the singles tournament, you've gotten your practice with mostly Kasrkin. You're ready to go. You've realized that you have these two extra ploys that you weren't really on your radar before the tournament. You have Relentless Pursuit and you have Absolute Authority. No, not Absolute Authority. It's
Intuitive Presence.
Intimidating Presence. Yeah, the aura farming of the Mystic will suddenly stall your opponent out when they try to go up and do something. So these are like two tools that you're bringing in to the broad matchups for the team championship. And then you mentioned that you basically have the Ravener strategy on lock. So talk us through the overall strategic game plan for how Inquisition agents crush Raveners.
So, all Ravener players tend to hide in and around their tunnel, and they do not want to overstretch themselves because if I play Intense Scrutiny, you're not covered within 4 range, which means that the entire first 13 inches of the board are pretty much my domain. And no Ravener player wants to go into turn 2 having lost to Ravener and not being able to capitalize and do anything in return. So, what tended to happen in pretty much every matchup was the Ravener player would accept that turn 2 wasn't going to go well for them because it's a team event. They don't want to overstretch themselves and lose the game big. They knew that they thought they knew that they had a really good matchup, but it turned out that obviously I discovered that actually it's not a good matchup at all. But what tended to happen was turn 2 would come around, I'd be set up, they would be conservative because typically they're either going to play implant, which 90% of the time they'll play implant, and most of the time on their primary they're going to go crit up because they're expecting to dominate turn 3, 4 onwards and take your home objective with the tunnel and just lock you out of it. And they know that they can kill Inquisition really easy because Inquisition are ridiculously squishy. When you go Kazakin, Exaction, bit of a different game, but you just know if I'm going Exaction into Raveners, they're still just going to kill you. So, turn 2, they're going to be conservative. It enables me to go plant beacons because they can't get to the wide guys who are there planting beacons. They can't dedicate a Ravener to do it. And I know that because it's a team event, they're going to have Into the Dark, so they can go through walls and do all the various BS. So, what I tend to do is the Kazakin demo guy would run to the home objective door, plant a mine, and then whichever Ravener ran up to that door realized that if I open that door, I'm taking 2d6 plus 3 damage, and that's not worth it because it also ends your activation. So the Ravener player would then run away from the mine. So I can lock down my home objective pretty easily. And then, obviously, that means turn 2, they can't pressure me. I'm going to go 2 up on the crit up. I'm going to go 2 up on the attack up. And it means, because of, depending on what mission it is, I'm going to be either 4-0 up or 4-1 up at the end of turn 2. And when you're in, and when you're playing a team event, it's already a massive advantage. And at that point, you're playing to either win big or hold for a draw or a draw plus, a winning draw, 1 or 2 points over. And it turned out that turn 3 would come in, they'd try to capitalize and go in for it. And I had so many little tools which are just so annoying. Putting a Tome Skull just in the way so none of his guys can get through without fighting Tome Skull. And if he goes and fights a Tome Skull, cool, you'll kill it. And then I'm going to kill whichever Ravener you put in there. So I'm trading a Tome Skull for a Ravener. If they want to try and play Slither out of sight and get out of there, I'll Absolute Authority it. And then I'll denounce the Ravener so he's stuck on his tunnel. And then I can go and send 2 or 3 guys to go deal with it. There's just so many little things that you had in your back pocket when it comes to Raveners that, because they're limited in the number of guys that they have, you're always going to get the last move. You're always going to get the ability to throw a metal gun in. And if you want to, turn off whichever major ploy that they've got that they're counting on, they have to telegraph it. It's going to be either Slither out of sight or it's going to be in cover on the tunnel, that kind of thing. And it's just so easy with the amount of damage dealers you've got sitting around there to throw a metal gun. I'm going to get 3 hits and a crit. I'm going to re-roll into 4 hits and a crit. And I'm going to Mystic that into 2 crits, 2 hits. And I'm just going to pick up a Ravener. And then after that, the Mystic will put his buff onto the Heavy Bolter, and the Heavy Bolter's now 5 dice. I'm going to get 3 hits. I'm going to cease this into a 4th hit, and then I'm going to have another crit from a Mystic buff, and that's another Ravener down to like 3 or 4 health. And you can just, they are tanky, but 5 up save for the amount of dice that Inquisition get to roll at you. It was pretty rough. And, that tended to be how nearly every game went, because they're all playing implants, so they have to then commit, and they're already down massively in turn 3. And they're all playing crit up, and I'm just sat there with a Mystic just out of range and a Hexus just out of range, turning off all these rerolls and saying, if you want to try and tap that objective, I'm not going to let you do it.
What pieces are you using as like bait to get the Raveners to kind of play ball with you?
So the Tome Skull's a good one because he's pretty, useless. Other than, just sitting there and getting in the way. It depended. So the Quest Keeper was a good one because he's still scary to go into in combat. And I did it before when I had sent a Quest Keeper in. I gave him the +1 attack dice because he was trying to hug in combat with the Ravener, and it went, cool, I've now got 5 attacks with Quarry and a Mystic buff into your Ravener, so you're going to have to kill me. You're not going to be able to hide, that kind of thing. But typically it's more of a case of staging and waiting. So your demo guy you can hang your demo guy out if you need to. You can trade a melter gun for a Ravener, and then if he wants to come forward and capitalize on the melter gun, you've got second, third guys, so your Pistolier or your plasma gun waiting to pick him up, or even the heavy bolter. So you've got part of the issue is you've got so many tools that you really want to weigh the Raveners out because they've only got 5 activations. But even then, you're going to have to use 1 or 2 of your big guys before that actually happens. So it is rough for the Ravener player because you've got so many tools that you can keep into your back pocket until you really need to use them. But at the end of the day as well, I could throw the medic out, and the guy will go after the medic thinking, great, I can get the medic off the table. But fundamentally, if he's forcing you to commit for the sake of a medic, then I'm not too fussed, because at that point I'll trade a medic for a Ravener.
Sending your dudes out to die just so that you can go get the big guns trained on them. I was always under the impression that, people would just charge into combat and then chill. Like if you move up a piece, put them on, have them be expended, then Ravener players would want to run into melee and just camp on you. But that didn't end up happening, it sounds like.
No, I didn't tend to leave too. I mean, if I had to do it, it was a guy that he's going to have to deal with to get him out of the way. So having, with it being into the dark, and it's going down a hallway, and I put a Tome Skull in the middle of it, and he's got 3 or 4 guys that need to come through to try and pressure in a turn 3 for for the middle objective, or for that kind of thing, then it's going to have to deal with them. And you can funnel them quite easily at that point, because the tunnel makes it, as much as it's so good for them to dash in and out of, it also makes them predictable. And part of their issue is they come out of the tunnel, they do something, and then they want to tap an objective, and then you intimidate a presence to that, so they can't do it, and it just messes up the mental mass of everything they want to do.
Yeah, I guess I never really thought about it, and this is part of the reason why that ploy ended up paying so many dividends for you, right?
Absolute money. I loved it. Yeah, I knew Inquisition were very much a no, you can't do that team, but I didn't realize just how much you could do with. There's actually more nodes than you expect. And like I said, I use the Hex Assist to turn off the neuropredatory instincts, which is it's big because everything comes in there. And I found actually more than I expected. I was using Denounce and Quarry less because the Quarry guy would jump into a hole, and at that point I'm going to have to use my equipment. And towards the end, I was not bothering using Quarry, and I wasn't bothering taking the Rosette. Or if I was, it was just there as like the threat of it. Because fundamentally, the guy was probably going to hide the Ravener's got the Quarry on it, because the Quarry's massive into Raveners. So I could just save the CP for the really annoying stuff. So intimidated presence just to ruin the day. And they quickly found out that the Hex Assist was an absolute nightmare, because the amount of times Raveners are sitting on 5, 6, 7 CP, they get 1 bad roll, they get 2 hits out of 5 or whatever, and you go, I'm going to re-roll them. And you say, no, the Hex Assist is just stood over there. There's a creepy old guy just shouting at you, and it turns out you're not allowed to re-roll anything. Yeah.
Yeah, so just using the natural horde advantage of just having so many guys and so many tools, and having your front line be the less important guys, your mid line be all your support pieces, and then your back line damage dealers all ready to pounce, whichever one of those front 2 lines gets hit first. And Raveners, at some point, do got to commit, especially when they were playing Implant and they had to go make an offensive action, whether it be a shoot or a fight action, right?
Precisely, yeah. So quite often what I was doing is they weren't doing much turn 2. Turn 3, my melta gun would go in. They'd charge and hug it and then implant it. And then I'd set up an APL buff from the comms guy because it's anywhere. So the melta gun is now on 3 APL. I can just denounce the guys in combat with, fall back, and there's a turn 4 melta gun shot for free. You know.
All right, and was every round at the team championship against Raveners for you? Were you just like the pick where the Raveners thought they had a solid game, and then you were there as the
Yeah.
the Uno reverse card?
Absolutely. Well, obviously team 1 was Bart on Novitiates. We had Dan on Hyrotech. We had Ryan on Warp Cover, and then myself on Inquisition. So all 3 of them are not amazing matchups into Raveners because Novitiates, yeah, they are fairly tanky, but double tapping guys like your Marines and obviously Raveners in close combat. Yeah, your Blessed Rejuvenation, wherever the half the attack dice value was. I haven't got Defenders of the Faith. They don't do anything to Raveners. You're gonna die anyway, and they don't actually do too much damage really because they don't have the piercing. The flames are good, but they're not. None of them are ever gonna one shot a Ravener. So it wasn't a great matchup for Novitiates really. Dan obviously doesn't want to play against his Hyrotech because Hyrotech do not want to be stuck in combat with 20 wound dudes. Yeah, because it just ruins Hyrotech. It's not the worst matchup, but it's not a great one. And then obviously Warp Coven, Raveners will just power through and kill the Warp Coven. It's not a great matchup for them, but it's not terrible. And it just turned out that we worked out that no one else at the team event had figured out that Inquisition just ruined Raveners, and that we had figured it out first. So both the opposition team and us were both trying to gear the Ravener Inquisition matchup. And then the opposition team would find out that this was a horrible idea shortly after the fact.
That's one of the fun parts about playing these large team tournaments when there's these like pick and ban phases, right? Which is not a thing that most players get to do. So, when the next one comes around next year, hopefully people who are listening, if you're in the area, you want to drag your friends along and play some of those games, go do it.
Absolutely. Teams events they are definitely the best way to play probably any war game. I used to play fantasy back in the day. Teams event were the best events. And I'd say the same thing for Kill Team as well.
So, we're here after all of this practice. You start off as a pure Casterkin main who wanted to do denouncing and absolute authority, and you've become a mixed exaction squad and Casterkin player who ruins Raveners with the power of your intimidating presence and your relentless pursuits. But looking at the new TACOP deck, what do you think is good? Because, Inquisition agents famously have access to everything. So when you have access to everything, you got to pick something to start with. So what are you thinking about as like the obvious strong picks for the team? Because now, we've lost Take Ground, we've lost Plant Beacons, so we've got to figure out a new game plan.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, you've still got the Servo Skull, so you've always got that back pocket mission action when you need it, which is obviously great for quite a few of these. With the amount of damage dealers you've got, and it depends on who you're playing into, quite a lot of the time people aren't want to get into close range because you got your Pistolier, you got your Melta Gun, you got quite a few short range weapons. So I don't mind flank because it's quite easy to push a guy across the halfway line fairly early on, and then for your opponent not want to commit to getting into your half because of the amount of damage dealers which you can bring to bear. I haven't had a chance to play yet with Inquisition, but I do quite like flank. It seems fairly easy to play. The part of the problem again with Inquisition is now that Plant Beacons is gone and you have options for pretty much everything, I can see it being quite easy to make a bad decision on your TACOP pick.
I mean, that's the great part about learning a new team and having things change up every year is you're going to have to make bad decisions at some point. So you're looking right now at the overall deck. Flank looks good. Anything else look good? Maybe like one in every deck.
Oh, for the one in every deck.
Perhaps you're a strong Martyrs play. You've got your bait out there that opens up your guns to be able to go get points later on.
Yeah, absolutely. It depends again. Into elites, you can see route because the elite probably won't want to push too close, and you've got the ability to go 9 inches up the board, getting close within 4 inches, and then Melta Gun elite off the board. So you can do route fairly easily. Just in the same way that back in the day, if I was playing into elites, I'd go confirm kill depending on which elite player it was. the route's not too dissimilar really, with it being double points for a guy with 12 wounds. Envoy's excellent. You've got spare dudes. You've got guys running around that don't even do anything. Yeah.
You can even technically score it with a servo skull right now, just because it's expendable, but it still has wounds, and that's all that Envoy actually cares about. So we'll see if some of those kind of small, silly things last through the first FAQ on the new approved ops.
Yeah, I think it might be good in some of the like the Elf and Gormonger matchups, Steel Intelligence, where you can go Exaction Squad, you'll be in close. You can take the is it Malacator? It gets free mission action as well, so you can do the Steel Intelligence bit fairly easily off the back of that, just to be efficient on your APL economy. Because I'm a massive fan of using all the APL to its fullest. I don't like wasting them, and that's why the comms guys, the Kazakhstan comms guy, is just so good in Inquisition for me. And why I know the Servo Skull's not great when Deathwatch running around there with Super Servo Skull, but having the back pocket APL is always, I'm always a massive fan of. One more little trick in your pocket's a nice one to have.
Yeah, I guess on that note, how do you feel about Inquisition versus Deathwatch?
I haven't had the chance, and I would really like to have the chance, because there's one less elite to kill, and I still have the same amount of guys who are very capable of just one-shotting Marines. I mean, their ploys are okay. They're not as, they don't get the same amount of rerolls, so maybe the Hexus isn't the shout. But at the same time, if you want to turn off the Aegis's shielding ability, so you can go run up with a piercing 2 guy and just take the Aegis off, Hexus is great for that as well. It's going to be an interesting matchup. The double counteract on Deathwatch is pretty frightening, because usually with most of the elites you can play around. You can out-activate them and then play around, knowing what exactly they can do, so you can get non-reciprocal shots. You can go after a guy with a quarried ceaseless, quarried and mysticked up melter gun, knowing that guy will be dead. And maybe now that they've got double counteract, it might make it a bit more of a hard matchup. But I still think this one's very much in Inquisition's favour. Canoptech, I think they might be the new. I say new Hierotech. Hierotech is still the new Hierotech.
Hierotech still remains Hierotech.
Necrons just suck.
Can't keep a good reanimator down unless you do it twice.
God. Yeah, that's going to be in it. I haven't played it yet. I would like to. I say I'd like to play it. I need to play it, but I don't know. It's going to be an interesting one. They'll be able to turn off Ceaseless, which is quite big for them. I mean, they've got the accurate 2 anyway, but turning off the Ceaseless is quite nice because they only out on 4s. You can do. There's quite a few things. It's just like Inquisition have a lot of back pocket tools. Canoptech have so many back pocket tools that it's going to be a tricky one to figure out. What do you do? Because Raveners, a melter gun with everything behind it can kill a Ravener. You're not killing a spider with that, and then they're healing the spider, and it's just rough. Like having a melter gun come in, do like 19 to 20 damage to a spider, and then turn around and end of this turn, the spider's regained about 14 wounds or something ridiculous. That's not going to be fun.
That's true. It does look like it's not going to be fun for anyone as far as the meta goes. Me and Jason have been looking at them on the stats, and I think they had like a 50% win rate and a 57% win rate, and I'm sure they're going to have some other win rate, and maybe they'll need a little tap. We'll see where things fall at the end of the day. Higher Tech Circle definitely got a glow up in the approved ops changeover with Martyrs being self-scoreable on a reanimated token. So we'll see which Necron team ends up making people pull their hair out more by the time Worlds comes around.
I'm almost happy I'm not going now.
Well, what are you going to in the near future? When I look at the BCP ranking, you're on the Yorkshire team compared to some of the other UK guys, which are London. So tell us a little about your local part of the UK scene and, what tournaments you're thinking about going to in the near future.
Well, the Yorkshire team has picked up quite a lot recently. So the Yorkshire Kill team used to be the South Yorkshire Kill team because they were just based around Sheffield. And they've managed to. They pulled in one of my mates, and he joined the team. And I was like, I'm gonna hang around on the edges. But there's nothing where I play locally in Wakefield really. There's a small local club, but Sheffield. I mean, it's England, it's the UK, so there's like 4 cities within 30 minutes of me. It's very much not like America. So yeah, they eventually suckered me in by being very nice, chill guys and having some really good players in there. So you've got Tom Shaw, who's like the best Nemesis core player in the world. Declan, who knows his stuff, and you've got quite a few guys there who you could quite feasibly see pushing, some top tables. And fundamentally, I'd rather have good close games against quality opponents. So yeah, they definitely pulled me into it, and it's been quite good actually in the UK. After Worlds and after the team event, and there's a lot of people coming away thinking, God, we should really do more team events. So this weekend just gone, I was off playing Sanctifiers in the Four Cities event, which is Yorkshire versus Lincolnshire versus Nottinghamshire versus Deadwood, who are kind of like Yorkshire, Lancashire mix of stuff. But yeah, so that's happened. I did another team event a couple of weeks previously to that, and there's another one coming down the line, which I'm not too sure I'll be able to get to, but it definitely seems that those kind of local player bases and the push towards more team events, and it's got a lot more of a community focus at that point as well, which is a really nice thing to have, So yeah, I'm keeping my eye out for more team events because now I've got a team that I can join if and when they turn up.
Alrighty. Thanks for coming on and talking about Inquisition agents and talking in depth about murdering Raveners. It sounds like,
especially
on taking a shot on the dark on what's going to be good coming up.
Yeah. I think next year, if I make it to the World Team Championship next year, my nickname will change from Robbo to Bug Killer. So we'll carry the story forward. Yeah.
And as always, thank you, listeners, for listening until the end.